So
It's fine. Just feel free to ask them.
All right. So I just want you to give us a brief overview. When you started this PhD program, what were your visions? What did you intend to achieve with it?
So in 2007, I came here for a year and I did the research which led to writing the book, Scholars in the Marketplace. It convinced me that the Makerere I knew was being dismantled, that research had become either secondary or non-existent. Whatever research was there was mainly in the sciences, but in the humanities and arts, there was hardly anything worth talking about. So after that, I kept on thinking that if I had a chance, I would come back here and I would build a research program and I would train a new generation of researchers. That chance came in 2010. In 2010, Makerere advertised the directorship of Makerere Institute of Social Research. I applied. I was invited for an interview. I told the appointments board during my interview that if given the job, my first priority would be to dismantle the consultancy program at MISR and to turn MISR into a first-class research institute. I made no bones about what I would do. It was public and it was clear and detailed. So when they gave me the job, I came here, 2010. I tried to get my colleagues to change their method of work, to move away from consultancies. Consultancies where the client defines the question and you answer it, to research where you define the question. It's a world of difference. They were not willing. And then I wrote an application, a proposal, to create a PhD program here. It went through all the university committees, went through Senate, went through Council, went through National Council of Higher Education. So it had both university and government approval. And we began the research program, the PhD program in 2012, January. We should have the first crop of PhDs coming out next January, January 2017.
When you started the program, did you take into account that there would be a teaching program and a research program, or that both would be done in tandem by the people that teach under MISR?
It was integral. First, I realized that in most great research institutes in the world, the most innovative research is done when PhD dissertations are written. And in fact, most researchers elaborate the PhD dissertation later on in life. So I realized that we had to have a PhD program here. That would be the best way to have innovative research. I mean, imagine if you got 10 PhD students a year, 50 in 5 years, how much research that would be. That's what I asked myself. The research is not just done by research fellows who are teaching half-time and doing research half-time, but it is done by students. We give our students during the long vacation, which is 4 months, we pay them to go and do research. During the 4th year, they spend the entire year doing research. 5th year, they spend the entire year writing it up. So it's a geometric explosion in the amount of research possible. Second, if research is divorced from teaching, research turns esoteric and arid. If teaching is divorced from research, teaching turns into non-creative repetition of old answers to old questions. Research provides you new knowledge. That new knowledge should be fed into teaching. That's our idea.
There seems to be a conflict there. The professors that have disagreed with you, who include Dr. Stella Nyanzi now, say that for them, they term it patronizing to teach people, because they say that the idea that someone sits and lectures and then receives and marks, they say that's patronizing. What's your take on that?
First of all, there's only one person who believes that. That's Dr. Nyanzi. Okay. Second thing is that, sure, teaching is not a democratic relationship. Okay. Neither is medicine a democratic relationship. You go to a school because you accept that there's something you want which you don't have. Right? You go there to get certain skills. You are an apprentice. Otherwise you shouldn't come to school. If you think you have what you need, why come to school? Go somewhere else. Right? So there's nothing patronizing about it. It's hierarchical, yes, of course it is. Right? A teacher-student relationship is hierarchical. Right? But here, I will tell you one thing, we have no lectures. We have only seminars. A student takes 3 courses a semester. Each course meets once a week. That seminar is 3 hours. The emphasis is huge emphasis on reading and writing. Every week, for each course, you have to read between 150 and 200 pages. That is between 450 and 600 pages a week. So I'm saying that this is a reading intensive and writing intensive program. It's not an instructional program where one side talks and the other side listens. No. Students read an enormous amount. They spend the entire 3rd year. They are required to master the literature in the field in which they want to write and the country about which they want to write. Right? They read this literature and they are supposed to write bibliographical essays. So there's no patronizing. It is a university. It is a classroom. Right? The teacher teaches. The student learns. So that hierarchy is there. There is a marking. There's an evaluation. Grades are given. If you don't make the grades, you don't move ahead.
Maybe if you just explain to me what you defined as teaching when you wrote in the correspondence to Dr. Stella Nyanzi, telling her that she should teach students. What did that correspondence mean?
Yeah, it meant she had to teach. Everybody here teaches 1 course a semester. Okay, just 1 course. 3 hours a week. That's what she had to do, teach 3 hours a week. I said to her, I had a discussion with her. I said, look, your core interest is sexuality, human sexuality. Right? Human sexuality begins, the study of human sexuality as a scholarly pursuit, begins with a critique of feminism. Right? It's a critique that feminists share one thing in common with those they critique, with the male chauvinists, which is that feminists and male chauvinists both think that there is a certain normal structure to the human family, and that structure is reflected in a marriage, man and woman. And their differences are about the relationship between the man and the woman. But queer theory, or human sexuality, begins with a critique of this normalization, this assumption that sexual relations between man and woman is normal, and not just normal, but exhausts all human sexual relationship. And it's a claim that human sexual relationship has multiple expressions. Okay. So it's become an important field in the study of pluralism, in the study of difference, in all these larger studies. So I said, why don't you teach? We have a course on history and gender. Teach a course on history and gender, and teach the students about the importance of human sexuality and the ways in which it critiques gender. That's fine. 3 hours a week. I said, no, I will not teach. Of course, she said she will teach many times. She came here in 2012. 2011, the program began in 2012. And then she wanted to be confirmed at the university in permanent employment. And the appointments board asked me to give my recommendation. And I said to Stella, Stella, I will recommend you only if you agree that you will teach in the program. She said, yes, I will teach. I recommended her, stating clearly that the basis of the recommendation was an agreement that she will teach. She wouldn't teach. Next year, she wanted a fellowship at the University of Cape Town. The University of Cape Town said they needed a recommendation from the director of MISR, from the vice chancellor. Stella, will you teach? Yes, I'm going there to prepare a course which I will teach here. I wrote that. It's in writing. She came back, she won't teach. At that point, I wrote to the university. 2014, I wrote to Director Human Resources, copy to the Vice Chancellor. I explained the situation, I included the documentation, and I concluded the letter by saying, I need your advice. What shall I do? I have not received a response to that letter until now. I have gone to offices to ask why not, and I have been told they cannot respond to you because this is the Vice Chancellor's niece. Because nobody can sanction her position, nobody is going to censure it. I found myself in that situation, 2014. But then I told my colleagues, I said, look, this is a very sensitive case because the Parliament was considering this bill on same-sex relationships. And I said, Stella Nyanzi is studying same-sex relationship. Okay. This is very sensitive because we could end up exposing her. We're not going to do anything about it. I took a decision that a higher principle was at stake. And I will tolerate Stella Nyanzi sitting there doing nothing but her own work, not even participating in institutional research. She doesn't. She does her own personal research. Okay. Until we come to 2016, we have only 5 research fellows here. One of them is Stella Nyanzi. She's not teaching. Another one now comes to me and says, look, Dr. Nyanzi doesn't teach. Why should I teach? And I realized this is turning into a precedent. And if 2 more people say we will not teach, that's the end of our PhD program. I had no choice. None, in my view. I'm director of the institute. I carry responsibility for this. I have got to have the courage of my conviction to take action. And I did. I said to her, you're not teaching, you're not participating in institutional research. You don't need the office. You can go to the library. That was it.
Why did you necessitate her to leave the office, which he says was principally agreed upon between her and the university? And she says she has a permanent contract between her and the university, which would, of course,
She broke the contract. Part of the basis of us recommending her for a permanent contract was that she would teach, and she agreed, and she broke it. The office is not her private property. This is institutional property. Property of the institute meant to further the objectives of the institute. She was not only not involved in furthering those objectives, but now she was becoming a threat to those objectives.
Do you take cognizance of the number of people that have been in the institute and left?
Sure. 2 kinds of people have left.
Yes.
Monitor had this photograph, Stella Nyanzi sitting with 2 lists in the back. One group are consultants. I was very happy they left, because these are people who had a completely different understanding of the institute. Sabina Ziwa left because she retired at 65. Goreba Mutebi left because he moved to Rwanda. His family was in Rwanda. The others moved and set up consultancies in town. That's fine. This was their option, they took it. There's another group which left, different reasons. This group are all people employed from outside. The university will, when we employ people from outside, they will not give them more than a one-year contract, perpetually renewed. One person, Adam Branch, had a 2-year contract renewed, but Giuliano Martinello had a 1-year contract, 1 year. Who's going to stay in a 1-year contract? For how long? Until they have an option. Giuliano Martinello was offered a job by the American University of Beirut. He went there. Adam Branch went to Cambridge University. These are choices people make. Right? You know, we began in 2012. We were beneficiaries of the fact that there was an economic downturn in the West. There were very few jobs. There were huge numbers of unemployed, brilliant PhDs. Some of them came here. Because they came here, their CVs were strengthened. They got jobs outside, they went. But Giuliano Martinello still sits as an examiner from Beirut. Right? We've just increased our network and our linkages and our strength.
After attracting about 23.5 billion in funding to the institute and devoting your time, you're a busy man, you're a scholar, do you feel the need to reconcile the differences that are here in a way that protects the program from dying out?
Sure. I'm always reconciling differences. The bottom line is the program. If I'm asked to reconcile a difference and the cost of that reconciliation is the end of the program, the answer is no. That's the bottom line. Stella Nyanzi's demands will kill the program. I cannot reconcile it.
When you say her demands take away the program, what do you mean exactly?
She doesn't want to teach. That would be the end of the PhD program here. And the end of the PhD program will be the end of most innovative research in this institute.
You're a man that has read books and been through academic institutions. Do you, in a way, recognize research as part of teaching without necessarily being in classrooms and having three-hour-long seminars? Do you recognize research as a form of teaching? And if you do recognize it, has it happened in this institute?
Hey, we are a prime example of an integral relationship between teaching and research. It doesn't exist anywhere in this university.
So as a research fellow, Stella Nyanzi argues that her job is typically research, and her job is to produce research papers that the school can benefit from and use for learning purposes. Do you recognize that as part of her duties, or it can only happen
Our
when
job
she does
is also training of researchers. The institute will not end when Stella Nyanzi stops being here. Each of us has a duty to ensure the continuity of the institution. Second, she doesn't even do research. She does no institutional research. None. She does private research. Every research fellow here is required to present. When they design a research proposal, they present the proposal to a Wednesday seminar. It is critiqued by a peer group. It is revised. Then the research begins. Stella Nyanzi has never presented a research proposal for peer group consideration at this institute in 5 years.
Are those grounds you have considered to terminate her permanent contract or to recommend
I'm
her
not terminating any contract. I can't do that. I'm just saying you can't have an office here. I've asked the university to move her. You see, until yesterday I thought that our goal should be to have Stella Nyanzi teach. Now I think it would be a disaster. After yesterday's theatre, Stella Nyanzi would be the kiss of death for this program.
Why do you say that?
Oh my God. Nobody will come here. No self-respecting academic will come to MISR, which has Stella Nyanzi as a teacher. No student who has more than one offer will come to MISR. No donor will be willing to put their money in MISR if they have a choice. This was staged theatre, carefully planned and carefully staged. The monitor said she had put on her Facebook site a day before the announcement she was going to do this. The TV cameras came with her. The 3 students who had placards came with those placards and tapes on their faces. She came with the chain, making it look like we had chained her, and as if this was her office. It wasn't. It was in front of the director's office. She chained herself. Came with paint, defaced, vandalized, hurled insults. Is that the announcement of a great PhD program, a great intellectual institute? No, it's not.
Students within the program say that the administration has been slow to act in cases where they think that the administration should have acted. And part of these allegations include that the students who are international have been called wolves in emails. I don't know if you have seen them. But they say that these correspondences are things that they have brought to you in petitions, and that these petitions have not yet been responded to. What's your response and take on that?
I don't know which students you talk to. You probably talked to the 3 students who came with her holding placards. Okay. There are 40 other students here. Many of them are on vacation because we're on vacation now. But many of them are here. Speak to all of them. Second, you can have disagreements between students. Students can call students names. I am not stepping in the midst of that. I am not adjudicating so long as it is name calling. We stepped in. The 3 students who came here, 2 of them are under threat of losing their fellowship because of poor performance. The 3rd one tried to organize students but failed on the demand that students have a right to be involved in their own evaluation. This is what Stella Nyanzi is saying, that this is a patronizing relationship. Students should be involved in evaluating themselves. I said it's unheard of. Nowhere in the world are students involved in evaluating themselves. Right? So these are the 3 students. The one who tried to organize students around that demand argued in emails that the students who were getting low grades were being victimized for having different views. And the students who were getting high grades, when this person was opposed by other students, his response was, you are getting high grades because you are being favored by the director. So the claim was that we are running a regime of patronage and intimidation here. That we had to take care of.
There are memos that show or indicate that the school changed its grading system in the middle of a semester. Are these memos factual? And is it true that you've changed the grading structure in?
We didn't change any grading structure. We have a good academic standing policy. Okay. So the good academic standing policy was approved by the academic board in 2013. Then I think somewhere in 2015, the PhD administrator sent out a memo giving the good academic standing, but it was erroneous. We withdrew it, and we brought back the 2013 memo. That's the only incident I can remember, but it was never implemented. So no grading structure change.
Some students have written mails to you, and I hope you have received some of these mails, complaining about this good academic standing policy. And part of the complaints is that the changing or the requirement that people have a B+ to stay in good academic standing of the policy is a bit too much. And have you subjected this to an investigation or a committee to give them
Students don't decide. Students don't decide what is a grading mark and what is not a grading mark. The academic board decides. The director doesn't decide. Right? It's the academic board. And this policy has been in place since 2013, sanctioned by the academic board of MISR. And this is not a policy about pass or fail. This is a policy about fellowship. You want to keep your fellowship, you have to have good performance. Simple as that.
On the issue of fellowships and scholarships, students whose fellowships and scholarships have been terminated say that the university has not allowed them to access facilities, and yet they say that the termination of their scholarships is only a temporary measure, that they could fund their own education, or that they're in the process of challenging the methods within which this has been terminated. Is this factual?
I mean, if your fellowship is terminated, that means we are not going to pay your fees, and we are not going to pay your monthly upkeep. That's it. That's the meaning of termination of fellowship. Whether it's temporary or permanent depends on what you do. If you get good enough grades, fine. But it depends. I mean, we don't have a pile of money sitting there. These fellowships are funded by donors. You don't use them 1 year, you lose them. I mean, it's not permanent. If students think that we just have an endless flow of money and we can just turn the tap on whenever they are ready to do good enough work, it's not going to work.
Still on the point of fair hearing, is it true that students are not allowed to access facilities when their fellowships have been terminated?
What facilities? They're not allowed free housing.
No, facilities meaning the library,
of course they're allowed
to
access the library. They're not allowed to access lectures if they don't pay their fees. That's the whole university. We allow them for a semester, but if they haven't paid their fees by the end of the semester, I mean, there's no free education.
Professor, do you have mechanisms for good, fair hearing within the institutions? And if they exist, which are these?
So we have, examinations irregularities committee. Okay. So if a student has a complaint about grades, they can take to the examinations irregularity. Anything to do with academic, they can take it to that committee. We don't have a disciplinary committee. Okay. And this I've realized this year, but it's not clear whether we can or not, because we had this case of this student who was writing these letters about people who are being favored are getting high grades and people who disagree with the director are getting low grades. And then finally we agreed with the university. We asked the legal counsel at the university for his advice, and he said, no, you can't try this. You can't have a hearing within the institute. You have got to take it to the university disciplinary committee, and we have. That's where it is right now.
Do you feel in any way personally that people in the faculty need to command a a certain form of loyalty to you to survive in this faculty?
I think you have to ask that to students and teachers, other than Stella Nyanzi and other than the 3 fellows who were here yesterday. You have to talk to the vast majority. I'll just tell you one thing. There would be no creativity here if the demand was loyalty. That's impossible. I mean, a research institute which demands loyalty will not have any research worth the name. You can't produce clones of the director. Everybody in the world will know when they read it. They will ask, is anybody producing anything new? Let me tell you, the verdict. This year, Social Science Research Council of New York had a fellowship competition, research fellowship, for PhD students, Africa-wide. The highest number of fellowships were given to MISR students in the whole of Africa, including South Africa. Now, if loyalty was the prerequisite, how do you make sense of this?
What are your last words for the program? How do you feel now about the program in light of the events of yesterday? How do you feel about the students that study under the program? How do you feel about it?
Well, my last words are that we are witnessing a dramatic dismantling of this program. A dismantling under the initiative of the Vice Chancellor of this university. That process has been on television and it is now in the press. I, as director, am not willing to be complicit in it. If this process continues, and if the university does not give visible indication that they are willing to support this program, I will resign. And I will certainly not apply for a second term as director of this institute. That's my last word.
In the investigations, this is something, the investigations that the university has instituted, you said you will not take part in them because of the Vice Chancellor being prominently the one that the investigations board accounts to. If that is changed, are you ready to subject this program to investigations, and are you ready to accept the outcome of that investigation?
First and foremost, Stella Nyanzi is to be asked to leave the premises of MISR. That's the first condition. I told you, until yesterday I thought she should teach, now I think she's a danger. She walks around here as if with an air of impunity. This morning, shouting insults. People are scared. That's no environment. I don't want that environment here. Like a live wire, like a minefield. Be careful of Stella Nyanzi.
Wouldn't that be setting the terms of your own investigation in this case?
No. Of course, these are my terms. These are my terms. This person who did this has to go. Those are my terms, not anybody else's terms. They have to. Then, if you want an investigation, fine. But the Vice Chancellor has to be investigated. Also, the Vice Chancellor cannot appoint an investigating team which is answerable to him, which reports to him. No. He takes primary responsibility. He is the architect of those who would like to dismantle this program. So if we're investigating what the program has managed to do or not to do, he should be part of those investigated. We don't need an investigation. We need a consultation, but under proper auspices. Needs to be from outside this university. The authorities are complicit. They're trying to divert attention and hide their own responsibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for